Welcome to Mintel's Little Conversation podcast.
Welcome to Mintel's Little Conversation, where our experts bring you fresh ideas and new perspectives on how consumers eat, drink, shop, groom, and think. I'm Edward Bergen, global food and drink analyst, all-round foodie, and I am a massive hummus fanatic. Okay, so I am a millennial, that word that's been thrown about for the past 10 years and how different we are to everybody else. I'm a proper millennial. I was born in 1990, so apologies for those born in the 80s. I'm not yet 30, it's coming up soon. And also, I don't drink alcohol. And some of you out there, some of our listeners, you might be thinking, why is Ed telling us this? What's he talking about? Well, so today's topic is actually quite interesting. We've titled it The Sober Generation. It refers to how younger consumers, and we call them Generation Z, and normally refer to them as under the age of 24. It's the generation below me, a so-called millennial, and how they're drinking less, or in some cases not at all, for various reasons. And what we've done is pulled together a really great and incredible selection of analysts who are on the call today. We've got Jonny, who's a self-proclaimed Zennial. He's a global drink analyst. He's based in London. We've got Caleb out in the US, and he's a US drinks analyst. He's a millennial, just like me. And we've also got Laura, who's an innovation expert. She's based in London. She's from France. And we've brought her in as well to offer some reality and a bit of a perspective, because she's as close as we can get to this Generation Z. I think she's somewhere on the borderline. Say hi, guys.
Hi, Ed.
Hello.
Hello.
So, Jonny, give a little bit more of an intro to yourself. Say hi.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. So, I've been at Mintel for 12 years, and then the majority of that I've spent analysing the global alcohol market. As you referenced at the beginning of the podcast, I like to refer myself as a Zennial rather than a Gen X. Now, a Zennial is someone who's on the border of a Gen X and millennial. So it's basically
in denial.
Yeah, so it suggests that I'm completely in denial and trying to put a positive spin on the fact that I'm now very middle-aged.
Oh, no, don't say that. Caleb.
Yeah, hello. My name is Caleb Bryant. I cover the U.S. beverage industry. Like Ed, I was born in 1990, so I'm firmly a millennial, and excited to talk about the differences that Gen Z is really showing within the alcohol market already.
I'm Laura, and I'm working also at Mintel, but in more innovation insights. And today I'm here more as a proper or almost a Gen Z person, here to give more proper insight on what happens really, and maybe give more going outside of the box and bring some reality.
Amazing. So let's get going. Jonny and Caleb, can you tell us a little bit about this Generation Z? Who are they? And are they drinking less? Jonny?
Okay, so first of all, Generation Z are classified as age 24 and under. So that means that a lot of them are still teens and therefore are not in legal drinking age. But you've increasingly got the older Generation Z. So in a lot of markets, those who are aged 18 to 24, in the US, those aged 21 to 24, who are now coming into the alcohol market. And what's interesting about Generation Z is that they are a lot more sober than the preceding millennial generation, which makes them a real challenge to the alcohol industry.
Is the same happening in the US, Caleb? Are you seeing the same trends?
Yeah, definitely. As Jonny said, we don't have a lot of data on these consumers because most of them aren't of legal drinking age, but some of our reports data does show directionally that these consumers are not drinking. They're reporting decreases in their alcohol consumption. And actually, in the U.S., the Centers for Disease Control, they've run this substance use study for decades, I think going back to the 70s, and they've found that underage drinking among this generation is at its lowest point ever recorded.
Wow, gosh, okay. Laura, as for today, our Gen Z, are you seeing this happen? Like, are you seeing a change? Like when I remember growing up as a millennial, it was like cool to go out and get drunk with your friends, and that was seen as, I had to try and get a fake ID and go out clubbing and try and drink before I was 18, and to be seen drinking was seen as to be part of the group. Has there been a change? Are you seeing it from your friends now?
I will be totally honest and transparent. I wouldn't say it's totally like we don't drink anymore, but in a way I agree, because we definitely see something in that sense. But it's really hard to measure, I guess. But I think we're having more kind of conscious way of drinking, also more planning ahead the week we will have activities, because we are a very busy generation. We always have many things to do, like getting, I don't know, we have a gym session, we have a class of something, and then we go to the cinema or something, and we have so many options also to stay at home. So there is all these different aspects of our young generation lives that makes us more in control also, if I can say, of what we do. And also I reckon that I don't want to go too much into details for now, but as we plan it, we're also more into the quality, and the quality matters in general on what we do. I think we are more aware about like kind of what happens in general. So
I've got a question for Laura, actually, because I'm really interested in this, because I keep reading about how Generation Z hates hangovers. Now, when I was growing up as a Zennial, hangovers were something that you just got on with. You just kind of carried on. You weren't very functional at work, but you just got on with it. I read and I hear that actually Generation Z hate hangovers and will do anything to avoid them, and are coming up with terms like hangxiety, whereby you often
hashtag hangxiety,
anxious and off-piste in your mental health when you're hungover. Is there any kind of truth to that from what you see?
Yeah, I agree. I think we hate hangovers, and like we are trying to find remedies, like this specific detox juice or something that will help us to get over the day after and continue as if nothing happened the day before. So I agree for that.
I recommend an poached egg breakfast on toast with some grilled beef tomatoes, some avocado, and some hummus to dip with on the side. But that's just me.
Why do you always mention hummus, Ed?
It has to be said. It's really interesting, because I'm going to get into this like why, because there's so many reasons, and the reason I always think of is when I was growing up, we didn't really have a camera phone at 18. I think the first one came out, you had a little flip phone, and you could take the tiniest little photo ever. But now I'm thinking that if you get drunk or if you're hungover, that could be on the internet forever. And we don't really want that to happen. So is that affecting them? Is that one of the reasons why? Caleb, do you see that?
I disagree with that slightly. As a millennial, when I was in university, social media was a thing. Most people had a smartphone at that time. Instagram was around. It wasn't nearly as big as it is now. But this idea of being caught on camera, recorded, it did exist then. Perhaps the younger generation does view it differently. I think that the social mores are such that you don't record or take photos of someone who's really drunk. I think that there is kind of like a stigma against that. You're not going to post that online without your friend's knowledge, and if you are, you're kind of a jerk. But I think more so it's kind of what Laura mentioned, that I think there are just the way that people are interacting with each other, the way that we are socializing, especially the younger consumers, is very different. There are just simply more options for people, more entertainment options. You don't have to go to a bar to meet people and to socialize with people. You can talk to your friends online. There's now Netflix. You have unlimited entertainment options to you within the home, video games, just other activities that you can do outside of drinking, especially on-premise drinking.
So just less face-to-face socializing. It's just more in the digital world, or just people are a bit more recluse. They're just a bit more isolated. Is that driving it a little bit?
I would say so, and certainly in some instances more isolation, but I don't like to paint the picture that this is a young generation that's only on social media. I think that they are just utilizing different technologies for socialization, whether that be FaceTime or Instagram, or they're still meeting up in person for social activities.
There's a couple of things I'd add to that as well. First of all, Heineken have done some interesting research showing that certainly amongst younger millennials, control is a big factor in them not wanting to get too drunk. So I think social media is an element to that, but I don't think that social media is the main thing that's driving this. And I actually think the main thing that's driving it beyond social media or beyond the Gen Z being very, very busy is the fact that health and healthy lifestyles is now such a big factor in decision making. And when I was younger, being healthy was not cool. Being vegan was not cool. Being healthy was almost a bit weird and a bit niche. I think that's completely changed. And I think the context that younger people are growing up in is that actually it's really, really important to look after your health, both from a wellness lifestyle, but also from a beauty perspective as well.
And Jonny, you just mentioned veganism, and I find it really interesting because it's kind of the same, I would say, the same area in this generation, my generation, where you have so many options, and it's not because you're vegan or you don't drink that you're seen as someone like not cool. It's totally true, and you have different levels of these kind of choices. You can be vegan, but you can be vegetarian or flexitarian, as you can drink, not drink, or drink just less, or drink mocktails or stuff. So it's something that is quite new, I think, in that sense, and that can be linked to not only drinking but more a global social aspect.
Yeah, and I often use that analogy of a flexitarian when I describe the Gen Z to clients. So it's not that Gen Zs are just teetotalers and that they never drink alcohol. It's more that they drink alcohol less, and they're just like flexitarians are not vegans. They're people who like meat but occasionally will dip into veganism. It's the same with alcohol. So what we're seeing, the real challenge for alcohol brands is that not that consumers of the younger generation have stopped drinking, but that they're drinking less. So really it's up to brands to make sure that they're spending more to make up for that lost volume.
I think that health and wellness component is such a major contributor to this for Gen Z and also for the millennials. And actually, when you look at what alcohol brands are outperforming their competitors, a lot of them, especially within the beer category, tend to be more health focused. Michelob Ultra is one of the only large beer brands that's seeing any real growth, and they have a very, very health and wellness focused marketing campaign. In the US, of course, has been the absolute explosion of hard seltzers, White Claw, which I think a lot of people perceive as being a more healthful option. And as Jonny said, these consumers, a lot of them are drinking, but they are making those more maybe health conscious decisions, whether that be drinking less in total or they're making a switch to what they perceive to be a more healthful drink.
I read a really cool article, and rather than call them Generation Z, they call them Generation Me, and this idea that you as a person, you're so much more individual. You're no longer part of a group as you used to be, and therefore it's so much easier to make a personal decision. And this reminds me of that consumers are much happier to say, you know what, I do what I do. I should still be, have my friends that maybe don't do the same things as me. And I think that's great in some ways, and it's a really positive way to view the world.
Yeah, I think that the views of consumers around not drinking are changing or shifting. I think that it's just becoming a lot easier for consumers not to drink. I think that for a while there might have been some, like the idea of teetotaling, it was maybe associated with religiosity, or it was more kind of a less common thing to not drink. But now we have terms popping up in our vernacular like mindful drinking or sober curious. In some instances, it's becoming kind of trendy not to drink. When you see things like dry January, those kind of challenges or decisions not to drink are kind of permeating.
It's funny that Veganuary is the same month as Dry January.
Dry January is fine for me.
I'm going to read you out one of my favorite quotes, and this is from Chloe Comby, who's done a lot of studies and written books about Generation Z. And she says that teenagers are thinking that if they don't drink and take drugs, if they sit at home drinking green smoothies and meditating, they'll be beautiful and have really shiny hair. And shiny hair looks great on Instagram.
It doesn't necessarily poo-poos it a little bit. I think it's funny. It sort of sets it out really nicely. I've got
And
one other.
Laura. Oh, sorry, Laura. You said you did dry January and
No,
enjoyed
I
it.
didn't. But actually, a few friends of mine did, rather than the UK or even France. And it's funny because they found it very kind of difficult, to be honest, a month without one drink, but they didn't stop afterwards. So it's really kind of a self-conscious, healthy things after, I think, maybe the holidays and everything around it, kind of a challenge. So it means that there is something behind it if it's the challenge also, and it can raise other questions afterwards, but they didn't stop drinking after all.
The only other question that's come to mind, and it's what millennials complain about most, and I don't know the generation below that. There's the older generations, the self-proclaimed Zennials, have ruined the world for the rest of us. We've got no money, we can't buy houses, we can't.
I blame the baby boomers.
Baby boomers. Now, do you think, especially when they're out, that actually price has something to do with it? That they have just less money in their pocket and they can't spend £13 on a crazy cocktail? They'd rather go and buy the food instead. Is that something to do with it?
I think that we tend to see with the younger generation that they spend a lot of their disposable income on food and drink. So I think probably what's happening with this younger generation is they're spending more of their disposable income on food at the moment than on alcohol. But there's a real opportunity for premium alcohol brands to take more share of that money, because this is a generation that is a real foodie generation, and that if you tempt them with an alcohol-free version that is genuinely exciting and tasty and enticing, they will pay for it.
You've brought us into the next bit, and I think something that we need to discuss before we get to the ending is what stories have we got? What do brands need to do about this? Because they need to obviously get in touch with this younger generation to stay relevant. And also, if they are an alcohol brand that may be in hard alcohol and spirits, do they need to rethink what they do? And also think about, both in food service or on premise and in stores, in retail. What have you got? Anything interesting?
Maybe if I talk about it from a retail perspective,
yeah.
But I think there are clear things that companies can do and alcohol clients can focus on. I think they have to realise that the Generation Z are going to spend a lot less on alcohol than previous generations. That's just a fact. However, the younger generation are very interested in premium drinks. So I think there really is a chance to gain in value some of the volume sales that are being lost. I think secondly, it is about innovating to make sure that alcohol is more permissible. So there are lots of different ways you can do that. A big focus from alcohol brands recently has been on non-alcoholic versions of beers, of spirits, and of wines, and the quality is getting much better, and actually the acceptance amongst consumers is getting higher. And there are other things that brands can do as well, so they can dial up naturalness of products. So Caleb mentioned Michelob Ultra, and they've done a great job of really positioning themselves as a natural beer for athletes. So a recent launch, they talk about the use of organic barley, for example, and that's really got a health halo to it because it's more natural.
Are you seeing any brands doing something cool? Are you seeing any, Kayla, or any really good brand stories?
I know that there have been some examples of kind of the increase in functional beer launches, so that they do contain alcohol, but there's some kind of functionality component to it. A lot of them are targeted towards athletes. They might have electrolytes or some kind of recovery property to them. I think that for the on-premise drinking occasion, so bars and restaurants, a big focus is going to be on unique shareable experiences, because this is a very social media focused generation. They want to have those experiences they can post online. And if the bar itself is unique, different in some way, whether that be decor or the drinks themselves, or we've seen a big increase in pop-up bars, things like that, it gives consumers a reason to go out and have a drink rather than stay inside.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of pop-ups, and especially in London, we've seen so many of them with the spirits, with also mocktail stuff. It's really popular. It brings kind of people.
Have you been to any an experience drinking evening rather than just going to a pub? yourself?
I tried the spritz one. Yeah, I was in Paddington. It was a nice experience. It's more like to meet other people. You're outside and you have the branding everywhere, so you know also what you're drinking. But it's more like an occasion, like a moment to share with others. Not especially around alcohol, but more about the moment, I think.
So I think actually bars and pubs and on-premise has been really slow to adopt this non-alcoholic trend. And actually, especially in markets like the UK, we see that it's retailers, it's big supermarkets that are really leading on this. If you go into a supermarket, you now get massive sections of non-alcoholic beer and different types of alcohol. But actually, you go to the bar and you've got very few options. And what the on-premise really needs to realise is that the new younger generation want choices. Sometimes they will want to drink something really alcoholic and really tasty. Other times they'll want a mocktail that's got no alcohol in it. Other times they might want something that's really low ABV because they've got a job interview or they've got work the next day. So it's really about giving them a lot more choices than they currently have. And I still think it's too difficult for the Generation Z to get the kind of drinking experience that they want in the on-premise. And all that's going to do is then push them more towards this in-home hometainment trend.
And I know that in the UK and Europe, non-alcoholic beer has a slightly bigger presence. Here in the US, it's still pretty small, but it seems like that's rapidly changing with Heineken 0.0. There are some craft breweries that are doing new and unique things with non-alcoholic beer. I tried one at a conference a couple months ago, and I wouldn't have guessed that it didn't contain alcohol in it. And I agree with Jonny that with the on-premise occasions, they've been very slow to adapt to changes in reduced alcohol consumption. Mocktails have been a huge white space opportunity for bars and restaurants for years, and it's just now kind of gaining traction.
That's unusual as well, isn't it, Caleb? Because normally the on-premise leads and the retail follows, particularly in the alcohol space. But I think there's this idea that, if people aren't drinking alcohol, then they're not spending enough money. And I think there's a whole mindset around that in the on-premise that they really need to get over.
Is people just more thoughtful at home? And therefore, on-premise, they're going to a bar because they're going to a bar, and therefore, but at home, they're more thoughtful about their drinking, and therefore, they'll try different things. I don't know. They might be completely wrong here.
Generally, people are more likely to try new things in the on-premise, and then if they like those, then they'll drink them in home. But weirdly, certainly with a non-alcoholic market, people are being asked to try things that they buy at the supermarket, and then they're not able to get those things in the on-premise. So it's completely roundabout.
Okay, awesome. And I'm wondering if there's any we're getting towards the end of this one. I wonder if there's any sort of final thoughts, or maybe if either of you mentioned Heineken 0.0, but there's another brand or something maybe to go after that you think is notable, that if for our listeners to maybe go and look up and maybe order something to try. Have you got anything in mind? Jonny, do you want to go first?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So Caleb mentioned that we're starting to see functional alcoholic beverages. Now, originally I was very, very skeptical about this. How can you claim alcohol's healthy? It's a toxin, whatever you put in it. But actually, I'm coming round to some of the innovations, and there's a really interesting brand called Sufferfest from the US, which positions itself as a recovery beer. So that actually beer does naturally have some electrolytes, and they whack in a whole load more electrolytes. There's loads of salt in it. And the whole idea is, yes, it's not necessarily good for you to drink beer after running, but actually you are, replenishing some of the nutrients and the fluids that you did also lose. So I can see that having some traction, particularly amongst younger men.
Well, there was always a thing about when you played Sunday league football. I don't know, in the States, if you play the same thing, you sort of football or baseball, something that after the exercise, you'd go down to the pub.
Yeah, and there still is that thing. Still is that.
And therefore that product does fit into that group, which is quite interesting. Any other notable brands? Caleb?
I would really be interested in trying the new non-alcoholic spirits that are starting to come on the market. I personally haven't tried any, but brands like Seedlip, like Strike, that are positioning themselves as spirits without the alcohol. So I don't even know how you call it a spirit, but they've certainly been gaining traction, especially Seedlip. Diageo is now a majority owner of it. and Strike, I know, is also, I think, attracted some investment. It would be very interesting to try these spirits to see how they actually taste within a mocktail. I personally like mocktails, but when I have a spirit, I like that bite of the alcohol. So what I'm curious is, are these spirits, quote unquote, able to replicate that kind of the alcohol
It's very hard to
and bite to it?
Seedlip's an interesting one because they try and replicate that a lot through smell and aroma. Laura, did you get a chance to try that Seedlip product?
Yes, I did. And
what did you think from a Gen Z perspective?
I'm not convinced. I mean, it's not the same. It can be nice as a more like a mocktail area or a kind of, but it's not. You cannot compare it to proper gin.
I found you have to mix it. And with a mixer, you get those mix of flavors from that they describe from the Seedlip product. But as a product itself, it's very botanical. It's very strong, but not in an alcohol way, in a very different way. But definitely, if you mix it with different things, mix it with one of these supermarket where they sell the flavored sparkling waters rather than a tonic, works really well because I feel like you get a real selection of flavors. Like there's an apple and elderflower that you often see in the supermarket own brand. Try it with that if anyone wants to try Seedlip, because I think it's a really good mix. It's my only alcohol advice that I can give, or non-alcohol advice.
As a Zenio, I refuse to pay £30 to buy a bottle of Seedlip. It's just never going to happen.
There are actually a lot of new tonics, with very interesting flavors here, and it gives a new kind of a boom in the gin and tonics. It's so not classical anymore, and I think it's also a way to make like new flavors, discovering new flavors for the younger generation, make it less alcoholic and maybe a bit sweeter also.
Even had from Coca-Cola, the Coca-Cola Signature recently. So they've got their small bottles of now mixer products, cola flavors, but they mention things like woody or smoky as like a flavor note to also then mix with drink. Again, it's another way to maybe bring that younger generation in who probably still drink a lot of Coke, but with a slightly different proposition. So you are seeing brands do this cool stuff. No, the guys, that was really, I found that really interesting. I think that we've sort of come up with a few sort of main ideas. One is to just understand this consumer group more. They drink less, but they're willing to maybe try more, to try something more premium. They probably like mixers and mocktails and maybe more cocktails and those sorts of drinks. And then also there's this opportunity to play with some of those flavors. We're seeing a lot more botanicals. We're seeing more with sort of health and wellness claims, functional claims coming through into this market to meet the demands of this young and interested and experience-obsessed generation. I found it really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it too.
Very much.
Yes, it was great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we're going to close. I'm sorry. I hate the end of a podcast. But what we hope is that people listen in and maybe get some ideas, go and try something. So to our lovely listeners out there, thank you so much. And please subscribe. Please rate this. We want it to be rated 5 stars. We want people to keep listening. Please review it. You can get it on Apple Podcasts, all the other platforms as well that are out there. We've also just launched, I think this is number 14 or 15 now. So, please just keep listening and keep enjoying. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and all those social media platforms too to get the latest updates. And also we've got a blog. So please follow our blog to get those really cool insights from our wonderful, like these guys, our wonderful analysts. Guys, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.